Hello, fly fish fooders. Cheech here at the fly tying desk. And these fellers here have told me that I have got to show you what I've been playing with lately, and that is this. We're going to show you 3 flies in one tutorial, all with this bad boy. So make sure you hang out to check it out.
That's a big brown roll! Yeah!
All right. We have something very cool for you. We have 3 flies in one vidya. What we're going to do is we're going to take this awesome Hebert Minor hen cape and we're going to show you what you can do with it. So we're going to tie a little midge with the small hackles up here. We're going to tie an ant with the hackles from the middle, and then we're going to show you that this is probably the best bugger hackle that you'll ever use. A lot of people get a cape and then forget that all of this down here is all that juicy, good bugger goodness. The midge we're going to tie is a pretty basic fly. It's just a rib body, a little bit of a synthetic wing, and a hackle. The ant, also very, very basic. It just has dubbing, a little bit of synthetic, and some hackle. And then the woolly bugger at the very end, that's the one you need to stay for, because I'm going to show you some tips to tie a perfect woolly bugger every time. All right, another thing that we're going to do here is I'm going to show you the tools that I'm going to use in these videos before we get started. So I'll probably switch off between 2 whip finishers. This one is the jumbo whip finisher from Dr. Slick. It's actually really, really cool because I have big fat hands, if you haven't noticed that already. And it's got a great shape and it spins really easily. And then this one's a special one. This one I got from a really good friend of mine named Richard Swenson. This is a Matarelli, the original Matarelli whip finisher, and he gifted me this and this. This is the original Matarelli bobbin, and you notice it doesn't have a ceramic tip on it. It's because back in these days they would actually polish the metal enough to not need it. So this is a pretty special item, gift from my buddy Swenny as well. So don't say I never mentioned you on the video, Swenny. And then I'll probably use this new Tiemco bobbin. It's brand new. We'll have a link in the description just below here for all these tools except for the Matarellis. Sorry, your SOL there. And then these are the Renomed fly tire scissor. I really like these. I've tied with them in hand quite a bit. And so you'll see me manipulating these tools today on these videos. Okay, this is a pretty basic midge. Real simple. And just a few materials. So let's just get right after it. I've got, just choose your favorite hook. I have the new X series hook from Umpqua. That's pretty cool. This one I think is their wide gap. But we'll have all the links for these materials in the description. If you just click the first link that says, hey, if you want to tie this fly, blah, 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 whatever they put in there, that's the one you want to click and you'll be able to find all this stuff. So I'm tying with just some real thin black thread. You know, you could use like your Semperfli 18-aught, your Viva 16-aught, or even just plain old 70 denier. But I'm going to keep this one pretty slim because the body on this one is just thread. So I'll build a little bit of a body, come back up to the front, and then I'm just going to get a little section of this Semperfli 3-aught thread, which I'm going to use to rib this. This is just in the brown color. So we'll just tie it in up here. Easier said than done. You can tell I've been tying streamers a lot lately. So we'll just get that one tied down, go all the way back, and then we'll go all the way up. The Squatch Dog's being very naughty right now. Then I'm just going to take this thread and I'm just going to rib that through the black. Just like that. Okay, once we're here, we're just going to put a really sparse synthetic wing on it. And I'm just going to use some trigger point fibers, some very, very sparse trigger point fibers. Okay, so to tie the wing in on this, I want minimal bulk. So I'm just going to take a little small clump of these EP trigger point fibers. And I'll tie those in so they terminate kind of right behind the eye of the hook. And that just kind of gives us a level tie-in point for our hackle. So I'll trim the wing roughly the same length of the body. these midges have a down wing when they're on the water. Sometimes they splay out a little bit, but their natural wing is going to lay down their back. Anyway, so I'm just going to get a piece of hackle that I've pre-sized here. Maybe it's a little tiny bigger than an 18 because I'm going to flush the bottom. And then before I wrap the hackle, I'm just going to take my thread and let it hang on this knob on the Renzetti. Essentially, I want to keep my thread on the back of this black head, not on the front, because I'm going to tie it off kind of a different way, and you'll see that. So I'm going to wrap my hackle forward just with like 3 turns, and then I'm going to wrap it back through itself with another couple turns. And I'm going to catch my hackle here and just wiggle my hackle or my thread through all of that hackle, and it will end up in the front of the fly. Now from here, I'm just going to create a tiny little head. And I'll finish that off with this little Matarelli whip finisher. That is one smooth piece of gear. All right. So once I'm done, trim off my thread, trim off my excess hackle. That's what I love about these scissors is the points are so fine. And now I'm just going to come up under here. This is kind of optional, but I think it really makes the fly ride a little bit better. Just trim up the bottom of the fly. And there you have it. Just a real simple little midge pattern. Can be tied bigger and smaller than that, but try this out next time you're out. And don't forget, it's from this Whiting Hebert Minor dry fly hackle. Okay, an ant pattern. We're just going to show you an ant pattern with basic hackle, a little bit of dubbing, and a little bit of yarn wing. All right, so first things first, this is a really cool hook from Umpqua. It's a new barbless standard dry fly hook that they have out. This is a size 12. No, this is a 14 that I'm using on this one. But you can tie your ants anywhere from, I don't know, 18 to size 8 for all I care. This is just a cool size. Anyway, really thin black thread on this one. Okay, I'm just going to loosely dress this hook. And I'm going to build up just a ball of dubbing on the back of this. Now, when you're building up a dubbing ball that you want to kind of stay intact, I'm just going to use this micro fine dry fly dub in black from Hairline. And I'm just going to get a little bit at a time. Now, it's important that as I'm wrapping it on the fly or on the line, I'm going to, this is actually dubbing it on the opposite direction that I normally do, because usually it's not that big of a deal. You can just dub your dubbing whatever direction you want. But if I'm looking at this and I'm doing a thumb and finger like this, my finger is behind the thread and it should be going to my left as a right-handed tire. So forefinger to my left as it goes on there. And then as I start wrapping it, it should get tighter and tighter with every wrap. So I'm just going to start, easier said than done, but just build up a big glob of dubbing right there. And because I need to build on top of itself, it's critical that I dub it down really, really tight. This bobbin's squeaky. Watch, here's the trick to stop a squeaky bobbin. See me? Can you see me? You take it, you rub it on your toes. I'm not even joking. And that will stop the squeak because the oil's on your nose lube it up. I'm not even joking. Spencer's looking at me like I'm a crazy person. Just try it, okay? Okay, I'm just gonna keep building up that body of the ant till I feel good with how she's a-looking. And I just totally put that dubbing on there the opposite direction. Like I said, it doesn't really matter a ton, but this will just help you get a little bit tighter dubbing noodles. Man, I am really milking this video for all it's worth. I keep thinking I'm there. Just keep adding to it, you know? Okay, we're looking pretty good now. All right, so that's looking pretty awesome here. Just a little ball of dubbing on the back of a hook for an ant. All right, I'm going to use EP trigger point fibers for a little synthetic wing here. I'm going to get about half as thick as I want the wing to be, about like that. Just a real sparse wing. I move my thread forward and tie it in about, I don't know, right here. I don't know what percent point that is on the hook, but that's where it's going. Then I'm just going to wrap back, not quite all the way to the ball, because if I wrap back to the ball, that wing's going to want to sit straight up. So I'm going to back it off. We're going to terminate that wing a little bit before the ball. Then we're just going to pull this one over on top of it. And we'll just cover that white up. Just like that. Now this wing, just a little bit longer than the body. Do that. Froof it out a little bit like Spence does with his hair every morning, and boom, look at that. Okay, now I've farmed out an appropriately sized hackle for this one. And I'll just tie her in right here on top of this black portion. So I have my hackle tied in. I'm just going to take my hackle and wrap it forward. Just one wrap in front of the other. And we'll tie her off. That's one thing I really like about these Renamid scissors, is you can really get in tight and do some just absolutely nice cutting with them. They're just good cutters. All right, same story for the front of the fly. Just gonna dub that on there, all kind of the same orientation, really nice and tight. And we'll see if that's too much or if that's just right. We're getting a little much there. All right, so we have a pretty clean little ball of dubbing right there in front. And so you have the two segments on the ant pattern. Just throw a real easy whip finish here in the front of it. And that's done. You can trim the bottom of this fly if you want to, but she'll fish just fine like that. Anyway, just a simple little black ant tied with black hackle that can be used for many, many different things. Okay, the woolly bugger. For a lot of people, this is the first fly you've ever tied. It was for me. Sitting in the call center, and my woolly bugger was absolutely atrocious. It looks like Brigham tied it left-handed. But anyway, mine was yellow tail, blue body, red hackle, or something like that. But it was the coolest thing ever. But we're going to show you just one way. There are a bunch of different ways to tie a bugger, but this is an absolutely clean way to tie buggers. And you can morph this into a whole bunch of different flies. But we're just going to show you the bare bones, simple way to do a bugger. All right, so I'm going to use some 6/0 thread. This is the Semperfli 6/0 thread. I want it to just be a little bit beefier. There's nothing really about a bugger that needs beefier thread, but why not use thicker thread if you're tying a bigger fly? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of dress the hook. This part's not super critical. Sometimes it can help the material so they don't, slide around. Then a bunch of different ways you can use marabou. So here I have a black marabou feather. Here you have the tips. There are the side pieces here that move really well. And I'm just going to show you the way to tie it in just using this tip section of the woolly bugger, okay, or of the marabou. The first thing I like to do is I like to find this little section right here where the stem goes up through. And I just grab onto that fella right there and I just pull it out. So now when I line all those feathers up, you're not going to see that little stem poking through, and all the feathers look nice and uniform. So the other thing is, if I'm just going to use the tips of this, all this stuff up here is just going to kind of be waste. Now, on normal circumstances, this is what I would be using for a lot of buggers. So you can save it or whatever, but we're not going to use it in this style of tying the bugger. So what I'm going to do is I'll just preen these feathers down, and I'm going to measure the tail so that it's roughly the same length as the overall length of the fly. This might be a little bit bigger, but that's fine. So I'm just going to use the pinch technique to put that on the hook, and I'm going to pinch my thread down all in the same spot. So I just did 3 turns all in the same spot. Most woolly buggers that are poorly tied have really bad body taper or really bad, bumps in the body because of, like, I guess you could call it careless tying in of materials. So here's one way to prevent that. Usually people will come in here and they'll just chop that off right here, and it creates a bump of marabou. So the way to get rid of that, just lift your marabou up, take your thread to the front of the fly, and then grab your marabou with the other hand and then tie it off up here. Okay. Now, if I take this, trim it off, and then just take my thread and wrap it back to where my tie-in point is, I have a very nice, even, uniform body that I can put my chenille over the top of. So I'll just go ahead and wrap that down a little bit. It doesn't need to be perfect. And then I'm going to take my thread all the way back to where the tail starts. So that's the woolly bugger tail that we're going to be working with. To keep it simple, I just use your standard black medium chenille. This is kind of flattened from the package, but it will work great. I'm going to take the chenille that I'm going to use, and I'm just going to preen off some of those fibers. This is actually a really well-made chenille because it's hard to get to the core. But you can see those little tiny core fibers right here. That's all I'm going to tie in on this one. So just trap that down, 4 or 5 turns, and now I'm going to pull out my hackle and just pick one of the biggest, gnarliest hackles from the back of it, like this. Okay, so you have pretty good taper. To tie this in though, typically with hackle you tie it in on the butt or on the base, but we're going to tie it in by the tip. The easiest way to find a tie-in point for that is to hold your hackle like this and just preen your feathers down. To about right there. And as you can see, there's like a little break between where I've preened it back and where it looks like a normal feather. That's right where I'll tie that in. All right, so hackle's tied in. I'm just going to take my chenille and wrap my chenille forward. Sometimes with this stuff you have to coax it a little bit to flare out. All right. So chenille's wrapped in. Before we get too far into it, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to throw a whip finish here so that I can really get into this hackle and wrap it right. So from here, I'm just going to take my hackle and I will wrap that through the chenille, and it will just kind of preen itself back, just like all those woolly buggers you see in the store bins. So once I get up here, just one full turn in front of the chenille. We'll tie that down. Before I trim it off, I'm just going to pull all those fibers back and maybe get a few turns of thread right here. And now I'll get rid of it. All right, a few more turns of hackle, and as you can see, the head on this is just minuscule. It's just a tiny little head. All right, so as you can see, we've got a woolly bugger with the right length of tail. The hackle tapers back perfectly. The hackle's not too big, it's not too small. And, you can come in here after the fact and you can get in here and like free up some of those chenille pieces that kind of got trapped down or whatever. But, you can make the woolly bugger as easy or as difficult as you want, but this is one way to tie it so that it looks perfect every single time.